Well, welcome everyone. To our members and our guests to the October lunchtime lecture of the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security Studies, New South Wales, which will be followed by our annual general meeting. In particular, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Rear Admiral Chris Smith, Commander of Australian Fleet, and a Vice Patron of RUSI New South Wales, who will shortly be delivering a presentation. Here at RUSI New South Wales, we greatly value our links with the senior service, which are long-standing. Indeed, a quick check of our membership records discloses that in our ranks we have no less than 2 Rear Admirals, 4 Commodores, 5 Captains, 7 Commanders, 6 Lieutenant Commanders, 2 Naval Lieutenants and 1 Midshipman. So our Naval and ex-Navy personnel comprising some 10% of our membership. And the earliest publication held in our library collection is a complete set of the Naval Chronicle from 1799 to 1820. And the very first New South Wales lecture to be published was a paper on the defence of a protected harbour, which was delivered on Thursday the 5th of December 1889, admittedly by an Army engineer, but responding to a talk the previous week raising concerns about a naval attack on Sydney Harbour. And we're honoured and proud that that association continues to this day, not just through our membership, but in a very real and tangible sense, having last year formed what we hope will be a long and rewarding relationship with the Maritime Intelligence Information Warfare School at HMAS Watson, where we attend each graduation and present the RUSI Excellence Award, which is presented to the candidate on the course who demonstrates excellence in junior leadership, the candidate who sets the example for others. The prize consists of a framed RUSI certificate, 1-year honorary membership of RUSI New South Wales, and a $200 gift voucher which can be redeemed at the Australian War Memorial. And we're looking forward to attending the upcoming Information Warfare Officer Initial Employment Training course, graduation on the 27th of November, and the graduation of the next Naval Intelligence Officer Basic course on the 3rd of December. Now to introduce our speaker. Rear Admiral Smith joined the Royal Australian Naval College in 1989. His seagoing appointments have included His Majesty's Australian ships Stalwart, Parramatta 3, Brunei, Perth 2, Ipswich, Geraldton, Canberra 2 and Anzac. And he has commanded HMAS Gladstone, HMAS Darwin and the flagship HMAS Canberra 3. His operational experience has included domestic operations and regional deployments in support of operations and assistance missions to the Solomon Islands in 2000 and in 2003, Fiji in 2016, and in support of multinational force stabilisation and security operations in Iraq on Op Catalyst and Afghanistan on Op Slipper, and as the Australian Liaison Officer to the US Central Command Forward Headquarters in 2008. Rear Admiral Smith served as Deputy Chief of Navy from September 2020 to December 2022, when he was appointed Commander of the Australian Fleet. So please join with me to welcome Rear Admiral Smith to the podium.
Kim, ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here. I'll expand on the bio because I think those bios are a little bit dull. I'm a country kid from a little place called Trangie, which is out past Dubbo. So water was not going to feature dramatically in my future, and I still remember my father saying to me, "What have you done?" when I said I joined the Navy. My mother made me promise that I'd get a proper job when I'd finished playing with boats. And I am looking at registering in a barista course shortly so I can finally achieve that aim. I am an accidental sailor. Was working in a bank when I finished school and said if I've got to do this for a living, I'll be a very unhappy chap. And walked into Defence Force recruiting in Canberra next to the bank I was working in, and they said, what can we do for you? And I said, I'm not very good with heights, probably not the Air Force. They gave me an application for the Army and the Navy. I put both in, and the next thing you know, I was in the Navy, and here I am many, many years later. So when I was looking back at the Deputy Chief of Navy time, I was a trainee boy. My Chief of Staff, Ray Leggett, who was also up until recently my Deputy Fleet Commander, was a Dubbo boy. The Chief Finance Officer for Navy, who's still in the role, was a Dubbo girl, and the head of our one of my 3 direct reports looking after the people and workforce space was a Dubbo boy. So you had 3 Dubbo and 1 Trangie, 4 people pretty much running Navy headquarters, all of which had grown up within 80 kilometres of each other in the middle of nowhere. So we have an eclectic mix. You talked about the people you have in the room, and for the Admirals, Commodores and Captains, I'm about to offend you, I think. My focus here is very much looking at the challenges and where we're going and what I think we need to do, vice reflecting on where we've come from, although I'll talk to some of that. And when I was working through this process, I was very much thinking about how this can be translated and used for the people, the junior ones in the uniforms here, and thinking about it going forward. So if you are offended by my views around some of the historical and traditional things that we do, that's okay. But please be aware that my target audience, although clearly here, goes much, much further as we go. Australia is a vast maritime nation, an island continent uniquely positioned between 3 major oceans, the Pacific, Southern and Indian. With over 34,000 kilometres of coastline, it boasts one of the longest stretches of coastal territory in the world. Of this, approximately 14,700 kilometres are beaches, comprising 10,685 individual beaches at last count. Clearly that changes pretty regularly, so please don't fact check me on that one. If you were to visit a beach every day, it would take you nearly 30 years to experience them all. An extraordinary testament to the scale and diversity of Australia's coastal environment. Beyond its mainland, Australia is surrounded by more than 8,000 islands, each contributing to its rich ecological and cultural tapestry. The nation also possesses the 3rd largest exclusive economic zone globally, granting it sovereign rights over vast marine resources. Its search and rescue region spans an immense area, covering nearly 1/10 of the Earth's surface, underscoring Australia's critical role in global maritime safety and coordination. Australia's economy and connectivity are deeply tied to the sea. Over 99% of the nation's trade is carried by ships, making maritime infrastructure and the security vital to national prosperity. Similarly, 99% of international communications are transmitted via submarine cables laid across the ocean floor. If you're experiencing a poor internet connection, chances are you're among the 1% relying on satellite links, a reminder of the hidden but essential role of undersea networks. The ocean also fuels Australia's energy and food security. Offshore oil and gas operations supply around 60% of the country's energy needs, while the fisheries sector contributes more than $3 billion annually to the economy. These industries not only support livelihoods, but also reinforce Australia's strategic importance in the Indo-Pacific region. From its beaches and islands to its deep sea infrastructure and vast maritime responsibilities, Australia's identity and future are inextricably linked to the ocean. Australia's economic well-being, and indeed our way of life, depends on free and unfettered access to the sea. But when you can't assume it, you must assure it. And that is exactly what your fleet does, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is a continuous, unwavering commitment to securing our maritime approaches, protecting our national interests, and enabling the prosperity that flows from the sea. Your fleet is highly regarded globally, and rightly so. It is in high demand, both here, at home and abroad, reflecting the professionalism, capability and operational excellence of our people and platforms. Every day, the Australian Navy fleet has between 15 and 20 ships, submarines, aircraft and deployable mission systems at sea or deployed, supported by 1,500 to 2,000 personnel. This week, your fleet has 23 ships and 1,821 people deployed, operating in Australian waters, across the Indo-Pacific region, in South and Northeast Asia and beyond. Your Navy is on, under and above the sea, utilising both crewed, uncrewed systems and increasingly leveraging robotics and autonomous technologies, many of which are being developed in partnership with Australian industry. A review of the fleet activities over the past 2 years highlights the scale, diversity and tempo of operations. In 2024, Fleet conducted 5 regional presence deployments, totalling 307 days operating in the Indo-Pacific, 21 days deployed in support of Operation Argos, the Australian Defence Force's contribution to monitoring UN sanctions on North Korea, 155 days deployed conducting DDG interchangeability operations with our US Navy partners, 63 days supporting Indo-Pacific Endeavour, another major regional deployment activity. During these deployments, fleet units conducted 83 overseas port visits across 25 countries, 13 cooperative activities at sea with regional partner navies. On average, 1,000 Navy personnel were force assigned each week to the Commander Joint Operations Command and in theatre. And in total, RAN vessels conducted 4,921 sea days in 2024. So far, in 2025, Fleet has already delivered 4 regional presence deployments, totalling 308 days in the Indo-Pacific, 14 days supporting Operation Argos, 6 days of DDG interchangeability deployments, 47 overseas port visits across 16 countries, 5 cooperative activities while deployed, and participation in 13 international maritime exercises. And to date, Fleet has conducted 4,257 sea days in 2025. These numbers tell a powerful story. Not only is Fleet delivering on its operational commitments across the region and beyond, but it's also continuing the essential work of force generation to raise, train and sustain a fleet that is operationally ready, responsive and resilient. This is a fleet that is not just busy, it is strategically engaged, globally respected and mission focused. As highlighted in both the Defence Strategic Review and the National Defence Strategy, the strategic environment in which the Australian Defence Force operates has become markedly more complex, dynamic and contested in recent years. The pace and scale of change across the Indo-Pacific region, driven by emerging threats, technological disruption and shifting geopolitical dynamics, have placed increasing demands on our national defence posture and operational readiness. In response to this evolving landscape, Fleet Command, like many other areas within defence, has embarked on a significant and deliberate transformation journey. This transformation is not simply about upgrading platforms or systems, It is a comprehensive enterprise-level effort to ensure fleet remains agile, resilient and strategically aligned to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow. From force structure and capability development to workforce readiness and operational integration, every aspect of fleet is being recalibrated to maintain relevance and effectiveness in a rapidly changing world. This transformation reflects a broader defence imperative to shift from a balanced force to a focused force, one that is optimised for deterrence, capable of responding to regional contingencies, and prepared to operate effectively in increasingly contested multi-domain environments. It is a collective endeavour requiring close coordination across services, deep integration with allies and partners, and shared commitment to innovation, adaptability, and mission clarity. Fleet's evolution is central to this national effort, ensuring that Australia's maritime forces remain a credible, capable, and forward-leaning component of our defence strategy, ready to protect our interests, support regional stability, and uphold the rules-based international order. This transformation has incorporated a wide range of activities, including structural changes to better align responsibilities, accountabilities and resources, most notably through the Fleet Command and Control review and implementation. There has been a renewed and deliberate focus on lethality and readiness across the fleet, driven by the Fleet Warfighting Operating Concept and the Fleet Warfighting Plan, lethality directives and community of practice initiatives. These efforts are sharpening Fleet's warfighting edge and ensuring our capabilities are aligned to the pacing threat. Fleet is also modernising its processes and procedures to better reflect the contemporary technologies and systems we are employing. This includes embracing digital tools, streamlining workflows, and embedding data-driven decision-making to enhance operational agility. A significant cultural shift is underway. The strong emphasis on command-led culture through initiatives such as the Sexual Ethics and Respectful Relationships program, the influential Warrant Officer network is being leveraged to drive cross-enterprise best practices, identify and resolve cross-force and cross-command issues, and foster greater organisational alignment. Importantly, Fleet is encouraging personnel at all levels to challenge historical norms and legacy practices, ensuring our approach is efficient, effective, and reflective of the expectations of a contemporary workforce. At the heart of this transformation is a clear and unifying ethos. Everyone in Fleet is a warfighter, and everyone understands how their work contributes directly to Fleet's mission. We are placing a strong focus on behaviours, how we operate, how we collaborate, and how we lead. And this is having a tangible and positive impact across the organisation. The sum of these changes is Fleet's transition from a legacy, stovepiped, platform-centric organisation into a matrixed, effects-based force that is agile, integrated and focused on the pacing threat. This reflects the operational reality that nearly everything we do now spans across Fleet and often across the broader defence enterprise. Our potential adversaries are agile and adaptive, and so too must we be. Fleet's transformation is not just about responding to change, it's about shaping it. In response to the increasingly challenging strategic circumstances we face, the Australian Government has made significant new investments, building on those already underway to enhance and expand our maritime capability. At the heart of this is the Royal Australian Navy's Enhanced Lethality Service Combatant Fleet. This initiative represents a transformational shift to our naval posture, not just recapitalisation of existing capability. We are more than doubling the size of our major surface combatant fleet, increasing from 11 to 26 ships. This includes 3 upgraded Hobart-class destroyers, with HMAS Hobart currently undergoing its upgrade at Osborne Naval Shipyard in Adelaide. 6 Hunter-class frigates, the first of which is already under construction, also at Osborne Naval Shipyard. And up to 11 Megami-class frigates, with the first 3 to be built in Japan and delivered from 2029. And 6 large optionally crewed surface vessels, bringing advanced flexibility to our future operations. Beyond these major combatants, we're expanding our patrol and response capabilities through the acquisition of 25 minor war vessels shared between Defence and the Australian Border Force. The Navy will operate 8 Evolved Cape-class patrol boats, with the final 2, Hawker and Spence, entering service in the next 6 months, and 6 Arafura-class offshore patrol vessels, with HMAS Arafura already commissioned and conducting sea trials. The second of the class, Air, is expected to enter service later this year. This expansion is matched by a significant uplift in the range and lethality of our weapon systems. In the last 18 months, we have introduced the SM-6 missile, the Naval Strike Missile, Tomahawk Cruise Missile, and advanced sea mines. We're also increasing our MH-60 Romeo Seahawk fleet to 36 aircraft and introducing a range of robotic and autonomous systems to enhance our reach, responsiveness and resilience. When considered alongside our existing fleet and the future acquisition of the Virginia-class nuclear-powered submarines under AUKUS partnership, this is more than just an increase in numbers. It's a generational transformation of Australia's maritime capability. It reflects our strategic intent to project power, deter aggression and operate decisively in a contested and rapidly evolving Indo-Pacific region. To put this in perspective, there are 10 navies in the world that operate a large deck amphibious capability. There are 10 navies in the world that operate Aegis or Aegis-like integrated air and missile defence systems, in which I've included the European PAMS and the China's Zhonghua Shendun systems. And only 6 navies operate nuclear-powered submarines. Sustaining and force generating any one of these exquisite capabilities is a significant undertaking. But here's the remarkable part. There is only 4 navies in the world that operate all 3 of these capabilities. The United States Navy, the People's Liberation Army Navy, the French Navy and the Royal Navy. With the introduction of conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines in the early 2030s, the Royal Australian Navy aspires to be the 5th. Now consider this. The RAN currently has less than half the personnel of the next smallest navy in that group. We are the only country among them without a civilian nuclear power industry, and our population is just 40% of the next smallest nation. At the same time, we are significantly expanding our national shipbuilding enterprise. We are establishing a guided weapons manufacturing capability, and we are building the foundations of a sovereign submarine construction capability. It is, without question, an exciting time to be in the Navy. And despite the scale of this ambition, I want it to be clear, I have confidence that we, as a Navy and as a nation, have the capacity to achieve it. In fact, we've already defied the sceptics through the progress we've made in delivering some of these capabilities. But success will require more than just investment. We must optimise our workforce and how we do business, what I call the fleet operating system. We must challenge long-held assumptions, embrace technology and innovation, and above all, we must demonstrate courageous leadership at every level of the organisation. So how do I justify my confidence? Let me give you a few examples. The introduction of the Naval Strike Missile, SM-6 and Tomahawk Land Attack Missile to the fleet in less than 2 years was nothing short of extraordinary. These capabilities represent the highest end of weapon systems employed anywhere in the world, and their employment on RAN ships ranks them among the most capable platforms operated by any Navy. During RIMPAC 2024, HMAS Sydney successfully fired the NSM. Since then, NSM installation has been completed on HMAS Brisbane and has commenced across the Anzac-class frigates, with HMAS Toowoomba successfully completing an NSM blast test vehicle firing last year. The NSM will replace the Harpoon missile and allows our ships to strike targets out to over 100 nautical miles. And within just 6 weeks of that first NSM firing, HMAS Sydney successfully engaged a long-range target with SM-6 during exercise Pacific Dragon. To put this into perspective, there are only 4 navies currently operating the SM-6. The SM-6 will complement our existing surface-to-air missile system, but provides a significant boost in range and capabilities. It can be employed against fixed and rotary wing aircraft, unmanned aerial systems, anti-ship cruise missiles in flight, both over sea and land, and terminal ballistic missile defence, out to 300 nautical mile, depending on the target. Employing this system effectively is far more than simply fitting it into the ship. It required integration into the combat systems, modifications to the ship, and all the tactical employment and assurance measures required to successfully employ and safely handle the missile. This weapon system has been successfully employed by the USN in the Red Sea, making it a combat-proven capability. Meanwhile, as part of the DDG interchangeability deployment, HMAS Brisbane conducted the first successful firing of a Tomahawk cruise missile, an event I had the privilege to witness firsthand. That moment marked the culmination of a successful year of enhanced service combatant lethality activities, and the Royal Australian Navy joined an exclusive club of TLAM capable navies. Outside the US, the TLAM weapon system is operated only by the UK, Australia and the Netherlands, and Japan has approved for the sale of the weapon and wants to integrate it over the next 2 years. This system can be employed for precise strike missions against targets from over 1,300 miles. To put it into perspective, that's approximately the distance from Sydney to Auckland. And for any Kiwis in the room, I use this as purely a reference to highlight the distance. It is not indicative of a target set. Okay. These ESCL activities are more than milestones. They are a model for how Fleet must operate to meet the challenges ahead. They demonstrated unity of purpose across Fleet, Navy Capability Division, Guided Weapons Explosive Ordnance Group, NI&IW, industry partners and allies. Clear articulation of responsibilities and accountability, strong communication and collaboration, and a willingness to innovate and manage risk judiciously. And it hasn't just been about missiles. Under C-2000, we've delivered credible deterrence and sea denial mine capability. During exercise Dugong last year, we laid our first minefield, albeit with practice mines, since World War II. These achievements are not just technical successes. They are proof that we can deliver complex capability at pace and with precision. From a standing start in September 2021, over 170 Royal Australian Navy personnel have now undertaken nuclear-powered training across the United States and the United Kingdom, with around 65 now building experience on US Navy nuclear submarines. This is a remarkable achievement in a short period of time, and it reflects the seriousness and momentum behind our preparations to crew the future SSN fleet. But it's not just about training submariners. Organisational preparations are also occurring at pace. A significant milestone was the deployment of the Fleet Support Unit to Guam and then aboard the submarine tender USS Emery S. Land to support the first Australian maintenance period of a nuclear-powered submarine, the USS Hawaii, in 2024. This maintenance period was supported not only by members of the submarine force, but also by our Australian clearance diving teams and the support force. These activities demonstrate our growing capability, our commitment to partnership, and our readiness to take on the responsibilities that come with operating nuclear-powered submarines. They are another reason I am confident in our ability to meet the challenge ahead. Fleet has also been working hard to transform the way we employ our people to achieve optimal, sustainable outcomes that align with the expectations of our contemporary workforce. That's you lot. One of the most impactful initiatives has been the introduction of HR hubs, initially at Coonawarra in Darwin, Cairns and Cerberus in Victoria, and now expanded across all shore bases. These hubs bring together historically dislocated HR and support services, co-located and focused on the output of each individual base or region. In essence, they operate as a federated shared service model, built on the principle that incidental contact drives 75% of outcomes, compared to just 25% being achieved through formal organisational processes. HR hubs have challenged traditional structures, cut through bureaucracy, and enabled cross-disciplinary problem solving focused on local solutions for local issues, all within a framework of Fleet best practice. This structure places Fleet in a strong position to optimise workforce utilisation, provide frontline support, and implement strategic HR initiatives, including those stemming from the Royal Commission into Defence and Veteran Suicide. Recognising people are both the key to capability and the greatest risk to capability demands a focus not only on productivity, but on creating a work environment where our people can thrive sustainably, meaningfully and enduringly. To attract people to a life of service in the Navy and to retain them in careers that are compatible with contemporary social expectations, we must be willing to challenge historical paradigms. Fleet has already begun doing just that. A significant example is the engineering watchkeeping trial conducted across the surface fleet. By leveraging technology to optimise watchkeeping routines, we've enabled our highly skilled technicians to prioritise organic level maintenance and defect rectification over traditional platform management routines. The results have been clear: improved fatigue management, increased job satisfaction, and a marked improvement in the material state of our platforms. This isn't just about today's systems, it's about setting the conditions for the next generation platforms. The Mogami class frigate, for example, will operate with half the ship's company of an Anzac class frigate. Trusting the system to operate as designed will be essential to successful integration into the fleet. Seems obvious, doesn't it? Human nature is not to, as we're discovering. The most impactful change to Fleet's operating system over the last 2 years has been the reintroduction of dual crewing to the patrol boat force. This initiative was driven by the need to meet increased demand for border protection operations, using what can only be described as an accidental patrol boat fleet, and in response to delays in the delivery of the Arafura class offshore patrol vessels. Following a successful trial in Cairns, dual crewing demonstrated clear improvements: better material state of the platforms, increased vessel availability for force assigned operations, and most importantly, improved crew respite and quality of life. As a result, dual crewing will be rolled out across the patrol boat force over the next 6 months, resulting in 8 dual crewed evolved Cape class patrol boats replacing a mixed fleet of single-crewed Admiral class patrol boats, classic Cape class patrol boats, and evolved Cape class patrol boats. While dual crewing itself is not new, what is transformational is the focus on realignment of the shore support system, including the reimagining of legacy training, force generation activities and upkeep cycles to align with the dual crewing. This is a long overdue paradigm shift, one that better meets the needs and well-being of our workforce and has the potential to inform other capabilities into the future. Another key aspect of Fleet's transformation is our focus on workplace culture through the rollout of the Sexual Ethics and Respectful Relationships program, colloquially known as SIR. A deliberate culture change program, SIR is a Fleet-led initiative delivered by Fleet personnel that is designed to foster a culture of respect, integrity and accountability across all ranks by changing language and behaviour. It's not a lecture. It's a workplace-orientated, facilitated, conversation-based learning designed to help our people understand the ethical behaviour and relationship expectations of serving in a modern, values-driven Defence Force. The benefits of SIR go far beyond compliance or awareness. It empowers sailors and officers to identify and challenge inappropriate behaviour, strengthening bystander confidence, and develop deeper empathy and respect in both professional and personal interactions. It introduces behavioural tools that help people recognise and address low-level unacceptable behaviour before it escalates, what we call keep it in the green. The outcomes are both cultural and operational. Strong unit cohesion, improved well-being, and a more inclusive fleet where every individual feels valued and supported. Ultimately, SIR contributes to Navy's warfighting readiness by enhancing ethical decision-making, communication and respect. It is, quite simply, about keeping it in the green. Your fleet is working hard, but it's also transforming. Transforming to ensure it can honour the evolving threat. I am confident that the Royal Australian Navy will become the fifth nation to operate the three pillars of exquisite capability announced by government. But to do so, we will require a willingness to adapt. That includes embracing artificial intelligence. Historically, our resources were time, people and money. But the advent of AI means that tools to task has entered a new paradigm. It's no longer just a question of who will do the work. The question now is how the work will be done. AI and emerging technologies offer the opportunity for many tasks previously conducted by people to be completed by other means. While there is rightly a focus on AI and autonomy on the battlefield, I believe some of the greatest short to medium term opportunities for leveraging the benefits of AI lie in the support areas: training, regulation and governance. In an environment where recruiting and retaining people is increasingly difficult, we must optimise their use for the highest value roles. This will likely require realignment of the teeth to tail ratio, seeing technology not just as a tool but as a resource to be leveraged alongside time, people and money. Australia is a maritime nation. We rely on unfettered access to the sea for our prosperity, and we are undergoing a maritime awakening. The population is becoming more aware through events like the recent PLA Navy Task Group 107 circumnavigation of Australia of the deteriorating strategic environment. Where once our isolation and vast oceans were seen as a moat of security, they are now increasingly viewed as a potential vulnerability. In response, the Navy is undergoing the largest recapitalisation and growth since the Second World War. This demands a fundamental re-examination of our force generation systems, how and who we recruit, how we train individually and collectively, how we sustain and operate, how we employ our workforce, and how we shape our culture. All of this is happening against a backdrop of resource pressures and increasing operational demands. Your fleet is responding and making good progress, but there is still much work to be done. Not just within fleet, not just within defence, but across the whole of government and across Australian society. Greater use of technology, an increasingly specialist workforce, reprioritisation of effort to the waterfront, and a willingness to innovate, these will be essential if we are to succeed. As part of Fleet's transformation, I considered it an appropriate time to contemporise fleet branding to reflect the contemporary strategic environment and direction. The new fleet motto as of last year, one fleet, focused, lethal, ready. One fleet unites all 9 elements of fleet command: aviation, diving, submarines, deployed teams, shore and surface units, and uncrewed systems towards a common goal. Focused reflects the Defence Strategic Review's call for a focus force capable of responding to the pacing threat. It speaks to the employment of our fleet units and the focus of our people on mission and preparedness. Lethal reminds us that fleet is the employer of effects. Lethality must be the centre of our planning and execution. We require a shift in mindset from a peacetime Navy focused purely on domestic operations and regional exercises to one that holds the concept of lethality as essential to operations. Led by the acquisition of nuclear-powered submarines and long-range strike capabilities, Fleet is preparing to deliver lethal effects when required and where needed. Ready underpins everything. It links to our original motto, ready and resolute, and reinforces our commitment to being prepared to support whole of government outcomes, domestic and regional. We must be ready. We have no time for apathy. Doing nothing is a choice, and one that is becoming increasingly risky. Our successes so far reflect a focus on clear, measurable outputs and the establishment of behaviours that support collaboration and progress. It is these attributes that will enable us to be one fleet, focused, lethal and ready. Thank you. I look forward to questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Admiral. It's nice to see an Admiral in the flesh. I've never seen one before. Lovely. My name is Julie Warren and I'm a member of RUSI. I did hear the word robotics, but I didn't hear the word drones. So what is the Navy's prospective use of drones? I know the Navy force is doing quite a bit, so.
Thanks, Julie. Drones, I guess for me, drones, robotics, uncrewed system, it's a collection. And I think that looking at Ukraine, I spent a lot of time on podcasting and looking at Ukraine, and I had the real pleasure of going to the US Navy War College, where I had classmates from around the globe, one of which was a Ukrainian, so I get a few emails from him occasionally as well, and he's still in the fight over there. And so when you're looking at those, I think you can get fixated on the concept of a drone, but it's really what they're achieving that's important in the space there. I look at them as an effector, as a sensor, and how we do those. So when you're looking at them, you're accessing systems that can operate in different ways at different risk profiles and all the rest. So we are operating everything from quite large uncrewed systems, underwater systems, etc., right down to quite small systems in there, and we are learning how to work with them. And I'm trying to encourage my team. I believe in crewed, uncrewed teaming and other aspects. We're better when we bring them into a collaboration of ships. And if you think of a ship with a bunch of other drones and support systems around it, using them as extra sensors, but also sacrificial and all those other aspects, there is so many options. And what I want is them to give me more of them to play with, because they're spending a lot of time testing these systems. And I said, if you want to know how robust your system is, give it to a sailor. We will break it faster, we will fix it, and we will make it do more interesting things than you have even ever thought about. So we are working closely with those people, but we just need to work out how we integrate them into the system. The other problem we have is we like big shiny toys, and so does government and announcements. So we do get fixated on those big systems, but it is very much across the spectrum. So drones is, to me, everything in those areas.
So thank you for your Thank you for your address. I think you must have one of the toughest jobs in the country, and because so many experts are telling you what to do. But I have some questions. Firstly, do we have a plan to protect these nuclear submarines and the shipbuilding facilities at Fleet Base West and the Henderson shipbuilding facility? Secondly, do we have the capacity to protect our landing helicopter dock vessels in a hostile maritime and air environment? And finally, do maritime minefields, once laid, are they capable of being cleared after hostilities end?
I could bring a collection of people there, Ken, and give answers across those. You've covered a lot of more remit. Actually, the biggest challenge I've got is not people telling me what to do, it's making sure I don't get lunch landing on my whites when I come to events like that. I'm much safer in my camouflage uniform. Infrastructure protection is a challenge, and when you're looking at the range of the weapon systems, as I mentioned, we have weapon systems on our ships now that we talk about Sydney to Auckland. The one I often talk about, sounds a bit like fratricide, is that if I had a ship sitting in the bay at Melbourne, I could target Townsville. So these are missiles that go incredible ranges. The other part is that the launch pads are mobile. And everyone sort of looks out there and says, the world is open to everybody, all the overhead satellites and all those other things, so it must be really, really easy to find things and track them. The ocean is a really big place, and if you are focused on a target and you maintain track on that target, then you can find it quite quickly. But we are also working on ways of reducing our signature, because your signature is not just a visible signature, it's an electronic signature, it's all those other aspects around it. So when you're looking at mixing those infrastructure, it is a problem. We don't necessarily own the protection of infrastructure in Australia. That's a domestic issue, although 2DIV, the reserve side, we're working closely with them around there. But in time of conflict, we would need to do exactly that, identify which is our critical infrastructure, and we've got processes that are already working to do that, and then how we would protect them going forward. The other piece for us is then trying to make sure that the people that can actually affect those are kept at a range that provides us a little bit of safety and security. I would argue that some of our biggest issues is not necessarily long-range missiles ploughing into Henderson or Osborne shipyards. I think our biggest issues is probably cyber and other issues there. And when you start to target infrastructure, if we put a ring of steel metaphorically around some of these infrastructures, then you start to work out where are the weaknesses and the soft points. And the weaknesses and the soft points quite possibly sit outside the protected perimeter. It's the power source that comes in, it's the data nodes that flow into it and all those other aspects. So it's a really challenging problem for all of us. So yes, we would need to do that. We'd need to be able to protect those things, but it's a matter of how would you do that in a layered way. In terms of the LHD, it's about employment. Would we send the LHD right-up threat early on in a conflict? Absolutely not. I mean, I talk to people and spin around and talk about a China-Taiwan scenario, and I'm not going to go into who would do what and where, but Taiwan Straits would be a really, really bad place. There'd be more metal than oxygen in that place if there was a conflict. So I don't think anyone would get benefit of going into that kind of area with an LHD to try to achieve anything in that space. So being able to utilise these kind of capabilities in a risk-aware manner enables us to operate them potentially in the Pacific, potentially in and around Australia, doing logistics support and other things, or again being able to support lower level activities and operations in around the region, which you would do. But you'd need to identify how you would do that, and then if we did utilise it in areas where there was higher risks, that's when you put some of the destroyers and other capabilities that I mentioned close to it to defend it. And minefields, if you can't manage a minefield that you've laid and you can't recover it, then you've got international legal issues. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you as a nation need to be able to do it, although we maintain that capability. You might outsource that to partners and friends and all those other aspects. But it is a matter of if you're laying a minefield, then you need to be able to do it. And it's not just to be able to clean it up on completion. There's some practical aspects of these things. In the oceans of the world with currents and all those other aspects, these things can move, other things can happen around it. So you actually need to be able to tend it. And minefields could be offensive. Minefields could be defensive in that, so you may be laying minefields in and around your own port infrastructure. So you need to be able to make sure that you can manage that as well. So all of these sort of things play into how you utilise those kind of capabilities. But for every risk to us, there's also an opportunity. And this is where you're looking at what's happening in Ukraine at the moment, and some of the most impactful things that have been going on recently has been the Ukrainian targeting of a Russian fuel infrastructure and the impact that is actually having. And it's a soft target because it doesn't necessarily sit in one spot. It's got nodes and everything around the place, which make it really, really challenging. So when we look at the things that could threaten us, we have now got the weapon systems and capabilities to actually pose the same threat to a potential adversary. So in effect, that makes it really challenging for them as well, so they'll need to be focusing. And on that one though, the submarine one, I mean, people look at submarines a different way. The way I look at a submarine is that a submarine goes out of port and it dives and moves on. And despite everyone saying that we'll be able to look through water really, really soon, we've been saying that for a while, it's actually really hard to find a submarine if you don't know where to start looking around the place. Once a submarine dives and goes underwater, you basically have, like you're dropping a rock in the water, an increasing circle of where that submarine potentially could be. With the current boats that we have, the Collins, very effective boats, all the rest of it. Diesel boats need to come back to the surface every so often to recharge batteries and do that. And that provides an opportunity for people to identify where it is. And the risk is not where the submarine is. The problem is, because if you know where the submarine is, you can operate around it. The problem is if you don't know where it is, you have to assume it's in a place that's really inconvenient for you. And that means that you need to prove the submarine is not there before you can operate in water space, which means it places an enormous amount of resource demand on you as you try to prove a negative in that space. And so if you get a nuclear submarine that goes underwater and does not have to come back up again until you run out of food, that becomes a really big problem, especially a nuclear boat that can travel at the speeds they do. That circle of probability increases so quickly that all of a sudden, within 5 or 6 nuclear submarines running around the space, within a matter of days you're covering large portions of the region, and that forces anybody who's trying to deploy or operate in those areas to have to positively prove a negative in terms of where that risk and that is. So these are the sort of things that the submarines are doing there, which means that when we sort of look at what's a threat to us, we need to understand that the other potential adversaries are sitting there having the exact same problem, and with the US nuclear submarines and our nuclear submarines and other partners and friends in the area there, that's a pretty formidable force going out there. So they're the sort of challenges that everyone's trying to deal with.
Thank you, sir. It's Noel Hadji-Michael visiting from the Defence and Security Circle in Whitehall. It's only been 4 hours back in country. It's nice to be home. Sir, if I could ask the question, you mentioned lethality, you mentioned this incredible transformation of the fleet, but is there a civil society conversation to be had so that outside of industry partners, outside of the public service and outside of the defence family, the people who do live in Trangie and Dubbo and Wellington and Geelong and elsewhere have this sense that their fleet is having this change and is moving into this position for warfighting?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and the irony is that if we do our job right, they don't need to know. So success is a complete failure. Listen, I think that the conversation is starting to happen. I think that a number of chiefs of Navy now have had a really good conversation with the community. The fact that we are seeing so much resource putting into the maritime area, and this is not just a Navy thing, the maritime domain, the Army is about to get one of the region's largest navies in its landing craft capability. The heavy landing craft the Army are getting are about the size of Tobruk, our old large landing craft at the time. So this is an area that we're all operating in that space. And I think that the fact that we are seeing so much resource put into the maritime domain means that we are having an impact in that broader society. Whether we're having a conversation with the people in the street and they get it, that's a harder challenge. How I think I'd like to do that, and this is a Chris view, this is not a Navy view at all. I mean, you need to have a foundation story. I mean, all nations have foundation stories. You know, St George and the Dragon. You know, pick a nation, pick a foundation story. And organisations are the same. And the Australian Army has this great advantage of Anzacs. You know, the Anzac legend is something that everybody gravitates to and they understand it. And in every small town around Australia, there is an Anzac memorial that has people from World War I that have contributed to that space. So they have this foundation story that sits inside Australia that whatever they roll out, people can attach it to a foundation story. They understand the Anzacs. They've got somebody who went across and did something. They know about Gallipoli. They know all those other aspects. I think that Navy does not have an effective foundation story. And when you start to talk about the Navy capabilities and the Navy things we do, people hear it and they go, yeah, that's really interesting, but they don't have somewhere to land it. So they don't have that foundation story. So I think what we need to do as a Navy is need to work out how we build the foundation story before we can build the higher levels that we're now talking around all these other capabilities. And we do have a foundation story. You know? AE1 we first lost up in Papua New Guinea, and many people won't know about it, but most people will understand that AE2 was in Gallipoli and broke through the Dardanelles. But how many Australians know that AE2 was the first vessel that had broken through the Dardanelles since 1080? It had been almost 1,000 years the Turks had defended that strait and getting up there, and no one had been able to do it. And an old Irishman running an Australian boat with a bunch of misfits got through into that space. That's extraordinary from an Australian story perspective. We have a whole range of other things that we do. The first action of Australians in World War I was a naval action. Going forward into that space there. The Sydney Emden, which we're about to come up on the Sydney Emden memorial. But the other thing too is that, you know, there's stories that are hard to get out there. I actually think it's more simple than that. I don't think foundation stories have to be factual. They've just got to be foundational. So, and And who here has heard of J.E. MacDonald? Anyone? Yeah. I would recommend that you get online or go and have a look at J.E. MacDonald. And J.E. MacDonald was a World War II naval officer who was a prolific writer. Wrote hundreds and hundreds of naval stories. And they were all focused around World War II, and they were all completely fictitious. They were sort of, if the Commando books were here with the pictures, he was like just a bit above it. He didn't have pictures, but he had great stories. And what he did was he got that Anzac larrikin sort of character and he put it in. And they have all the traditional names, Shiner Wright, all these other people there. The sailors were all recalcitrant. Annoying, frustrating, didn't really care, but heroes when it needed to happen. You know, were there at the right time to do it. The officers were either arrogant or drunks, and the drunks came good, and the arrogant ones didn't. I mean, it was just great. But if you read these books, and they're only usually about sort of 70, 80 pages each, that is my origin story. That's what I read as a kid. I found these in a second-hand bookshop and just collected these things and read these stories. And there was Australians fighting people in World War II where we were never even there, but it didn't matter because that's the foundation. I would argue that the Sea Patrol series, Sea Patrol is a foundation story. You know, I was buying carpet for a house one day years ago when Sea Patrol was a big thing, and the lady said, "Oh, you're in the Navy?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "How true is it, Sea Patrol?" I said, "Well, we spend less time shagging each other and killing people, but generally the concept's the same." And she sort of looked at me and went, "Yeah," but the thing she knew that no one else had known up until then, because everyone looks at ships, she knew that there was a Sheffo. She knew that there was a Swain in there, and the Swain had a naval police sort of background, so he was the authoritarian. She knew that the navigator was generally younger than the XO and much more engaging, and all these other sort of things. So she started to pick up on characters. And for a period of time there, people stopped looking at ships and started looking at environments and communities and society. So that to me is the foundation story. So how do we build that? So we've got our 125th debate the correctness of that next year, and we'll do a fleet review around there. And what I need to do is get sailors out there to tell their stories. Anzac Day. The Army stopped wearing uniform about 10 years ago on Anzac Day after the march. Best thing it could have ever done. Because who wants to drink a beer with the guy on Anzac Day in a suit with a bunch of medals? Everybody wants to party with a sailor because they're in uniform. Sydney is a sailor town as a direct result of Army evacuating the space. And I would sit there at the end of the march at 10:30 in the morning looking at a pub with music blaring, looking like a nightclub in King's Cross at 4 in the morning, with all these sailors in there having a great time and all these Army people walking past going, "Gee, that's no fun." Again, foundation stories. So yeah, that's my answer. We've got to start at the base. And when people engage, it does help in the Chinese
Last
government.
question.
Yep. So,
Malcolm Brown, former retired journalist, former serviceman, and Dubbo born and bred. The Falklands War for me was an eye-opener. The Sheffield was attacked by a missile which did not explode but destroyed the ship. The General Belgrano was stalked by a British submarine and was sunk by a torpedo, and Gualtieri, the President of Argentina, got his one aircraft carrier right out of the way so it wouldn't be sunk. And to me, that seemed to suggest that surface ships might be becoming a thing of the past. A, because they cannot be hidden, they're available, they can be seen by everyone, leaving the issue of the enemy, and that they depend forever on an unbreached hull. And it seems to me that in these days they're just targets in the sea which can be identified by the enemy forever, and leaving the initiative of the enemy. The other thing is I was a war correspondent in the Gulf War with the Australian Navy. We were attacked by Iraqi jets, but the American Task Force fleet scrambled and the Iraqis took off. But they would have had a go with missiles, and I asked, well, what's our defence? And the Navy showed me a little gun that fires solid metal at the incoming missile. Well, I thought, had they missed that, we would have been wiped out. And I'm not sure in the present missile age just how what future there is for long-term for vessel ships, for surface vessels.
Yeah, I'll use you for the Submarine Foundation story then. I'm a surface guy. I'm an air warfare officer as one of my trades. Listen, there is vulnerability around there. I'm disappointed because you were in the Gulf and you were operating over there and you were on one of our frigates or destroyers back then they would have had a lot more firepower to go back than that. Yeah, submarines, absolutely. That covert, that is one of the great benefits around them. But equally, you know, there are some restrictions around that in terms of the information flows you can get to them and all those other aspects. So they have their role, and that's why we're investing so much money in them. I mean, nuclear submarines is an enormous capability going forward. To be perfectly honest, my biggest focus in terms of readiness on a daily basis is patrol boats. Why? Because governments have lost power because of border protection issues. So in the situation you have at the moment, we can talk about every other exquisite capability there, but when it comes to managing our borders, and it's been like that for decades, then me getting patrol boats on the line is an absolute priority. It might not be the flashiest one there, but that's what we do, pushing it up. The other thing that surface platforms do in terms of that is that they are visible, yes, but they can also engage and do other things. You know, submarines are not as effective as when it comes to operating with other partners, etc., going around there. So you're building coalitions and being part of that and all those other aspects. So sometimes flying the flag can be part of that as well. As I was talking about, the missile systems that we're operating off these ones now are getting to the point where you don't have to be right up in the Gulf to be able to do these things anymore. You can be literally thousands of kilometres away and threaten a whole range of other targets, etc. there. The Tomahawk missile, incredible capability in that regard. But again, integrated air and missile defence, if you want to sit there and look at capabilities to defend against ballistic missile threats and things into the future, a submarine is not going to do that for you. It'll stay underwater and let you guys suffer as the missiles plough in. A surface ship with the kind of capabilities that you've got there, you can put there and you can integrate that with the Air Force and you can start to build integrated air and missile defence that can also support ballistic missile threats and those other aspects as well. I mean, surface ships, you can take satellites out into the future. So it's not a matter of all in one direction or the other. I think it's really important to look at the blend of those kind of capabilities going after it. And there are, you know, when things happen, and we've seen this again, I'll go back to Russia and Ukraine. I mean, everybody started with the exquisite technologies, and the Russian Black Fleet has not been seen in and around that place for a while now, and they got defeated by a bunch of small drones and other systems around there going after it. So it depends on what you're trying to achieve and where you're trying to achieve it. So geography matters as well. So I do think that you need a blend, but I would also say that the Hunter class frigates are probably the closest thing the world has got to the kind of technology, stealth and other things that a submarine produces. The signature of these Hunter class frigates is extraordinarily low. And if you turn everything off, because remember, satellites aren't sort of necessarily just all EO. They're looking for electronic missions and all those sort of other aspects. It's a combination of systems that you need to use. And if you're looking from up there and you're looking down on the ocean, you need to generally know where to start looking and all the rest of it. If you turn everything off and you start to manoeuvre in those sort of areas in space, then it does get quite difficult to maintain it, especially if you're looking across a broad range. So I do think that we underestimate the surface capability. I would argue we don't, because we're about to double it. We're showing the effect of it. But the other thing too is that you're not always up threatened in the fight. You know, you don't lose a war by killing your opponent's military. The reason you lose a war is that the political powers of one country decides that it is no longer in the interest of that political power to continue to fight. So that's an economic problem. You know, that is a whole bunch of other systems and issues. So when you look at our Navy, and the thing that I often do when I'm over in talking to my Admiral cohort around the world, is I'll produce what I'd call the upside down map. And it's got Australia at the top, and it's got all the other countries at the bottom, and you sort of show them there, and they immediately try to go turn it around, and they suddenly realise that the writing's all upside down for them. And the reason I do that, if you go home and you open up your atlas and you turn it upside down, if you look at a map as you normally do, you are fixated on all the landmass to the north, and you get captured by something you're used to looking at, and you start making assumptions. And if you're in the army, you start zooming in until you find the hole in the ground you're going to call a foxhole that you're going to defend and die in. So you're sort of getting smaller and smaller and smaller in the space. If you turn the map upside down, the first thing that hits you is, wow, Australia's surrounded by water. And Australia has access east, west, south, that we are unencumbered into the Middle East, we are unencumbered to Africa and South America. We can flow around the South China Sea. I got asked by a retired politician once, are you able to defend all of our ships running up and down the South China Sea if there's a fight? I said, no, but why would you bother? I'll just go around it. That's what ships do. They're cool. You don't have to go down the road and pathways. So when you look at that stuff, our ability to sustain ourselves, maintain our economic benefits, get those resources and do it, is all about having access to those waterways. And if you look at China, China is hemmed in. It's got a bunch of straits it's got to go through, which are really funneling in the space. That's a great place to have submarines, because then you're going to constrain them in their ability to move forward in the space. So it is really a matter of how you employ it and how you think about the fight. You don't necessarily want to be in the centre of it. You want to be able to maintain Australia's capacity to continue on, and we can do that without getting too close, and we've got the capacity to influence the fight by the kind of range and stuff we have and some of our exquisite capabilities. I'm just going to make a really quick plug.
Captain Christopher Skinner to propose a vote of thanks.
Can I just chuck a couple of things? The three key messages, you may have picked up on it. One, fleet, focus lethal ready. Everyone in fleet's a warfighter, and keep it in the green. We brought stickers. Take them home, blast them everywhere, and give me my foundation story.
Thank you, sir, for a most inspiring talk and a whole range of current issues that you've given the answers to questions before the media have even thought to ask them, which is great. And particularly the very first question about drones, we're sick of hearing about it, but the Navy's doing a great deal, I know, in terms of evaluating autonomous underwater vehicles and so on. I would like to ask the indulgence of yourself and all of the people here to voice my utmost pride and humble acknowledgement of my 30 years in the Navy. I joined the Royal Australian Naval College 30 years before yourself, 1959, and retired in 1989 as you were choosing to not be a banker. And may I say that that is by far the most important and enjoyable part of my life for those 30 years. And not only for me, but also for my wife and children. I met my wife in Hong Kong. She's from Melbourne. And that was because my ship, a previous HMAS Parramatta, which was based in Singapore with the Southeast Asian Treaty Organisation, was calling in there for an assisted maintenance period, and there was a typhoon and there were very few places you could get a drink, and the captain of the ship said, we may have to sail at short notice, so we're only allowing 50% of the crew ashore on leave, on short leave. The bachelors can go off on the first night. So off we went. My first child was born in South Australia when I'd been seconded to the Defence Research Centre at Salisbury. My second child was born in California, where I was on my second major period in the USA, standing by the previous HMAS Perth being updated at Long Beach Naval Shipyard. And my third child was born
here in Sydney, where I was the superintendent of missile and torpedo maintenance at the time we were introducing submarine-launched Harpoon and Standard Missile, the SM-1, the precursor of SM-6. The reason I mention those things is the Navy was a total support for all of us in my family, and I cannot speak highly enough about how well we were supported. And this was all during the Cold War, and it seemed the right thing to do. Everybody accepted it. I think there may have been a period 10 or 20 years ago when the Cold War ended that may have been less the case, but happily it's coming back now, as you described, the HR hub and that sort of thing. I just wanted also to take this opportunity of picking up on a couple of the points you made. You said that you're insisting that people challenge historical practices. I think that's absolutely breathtakingly inspiring, because innovation is the name of the game, as we've seen in Ukraine, as which you've studied already and mentioned. And also that the ethos is everyone is a warfighter. And speaking as a humble engineer, I'm very glad to hear you say that, because when you're in a ship's company, you're all in the same boat or ship, and you stand or fall on the collective action of all of us. And I think that's something that isn't quite the same in any other service or organisation, that you are literally all there in one. I've got to take issue with the last question though. Just because the hull suffers damage doesn't mean you've lost the ship. Damage control is a well-refined practice, and ship design is built to take quite a lot of damage. By the way, I was in Vietnam in the third deployment in HMAS Hobart, which is hence the cap. The second deployment, HMAS Hobart was hit by friendly fire, and 2 people were killed. But the ship survived and was repaired and back on the gun line in record time. Which brings me to my last point, sir. At a time about 18 months ago or so, no, maybe a little more than that, the Houthis started firing drones and fairly sort of simplistic missiles at merchant ships in the Red Sea. Now, I know that our government has defined the North-West Indian Ocean as out of bounds for Australia, and I'm not querying that. But had we wished or been directed from our government to rapidly respond to that with an Anzac-class frigate perhaps, I just hope that we would have had the ability to respond quickly to unexpected emergencies. In other words, it's not just when a cyclone hits or an earthquake or a tsunami, it's other things can happen. So I just make that as a rhetorical comment.
I can assure you that I did the check, because I had the same expectation, and I would have said it confident that it would have been able to achieve the mission.
Oh, that's fantastic. I hope you don't mind that going on record, because that's... No, I'm really serious. Us ex-Navy people felt a little uncertainty that, you know, if we'd been ordered to, we could have responded. I won't rave on any further, but I must say that your talk has been very inspirational. I hope the text of what you've said can be made available, at least in summary form. Great, thanks, Flag. And on behalf of the Royal United Services Institute for Defence and Security Studies, New South Wales, and everybody in the audience, I'd like to present to you a navy blue Rusi tie and a document which is the 90 research treasures from the Ursula Davidson Library, which is a great resource that we're right now planning to use for a longitudinal study of how military exercises influence the government's ability to deter future conflict. There you are, sir. I hope you find that as interesting reading. Please join me, everybody, in showing that.